let's keep talking. I've got the time. I'm working through some more stuff, so let's keep talking about this. So, I just had somebody say, don't you think that's a little dramatic? Because I had left in the comments that my mother killed my child. Do I think that's a little dramatic? No. No, I don't. I finally have a voice to speak up for myself when I wasn't given a voice before. Not really. This is what happens when you start talking publicly about abortion. People will leave comments, they will try to pull you down, they will try to make you shut up. There's been a lot of women who have tried to talk about their abortions, and they are slammed. They are just shut right down because people want this left in the dark. And this is why it's so important to bring this to light. Because if we don't, women will not heal. You have to bring it to the light. There is no other choice if you want to heal. So, I'm in a unique position to talk about abortion because it was a forced abortion. I didn't know what an abortion was. I never gave consent to it. I was brought to the doctor's office. They never sat down and told me what an abortion was. So I'm in a very unique position where, as a real victim, and someone said that to me too before, they're like, you're a real victim because you never really chose this. You didn't understand what it was. Whereas people may feel like women who did choose this were not a victim. Talking to a lot of women who have chose, they did know, they chose. I still feel like they didn't really understand. There is so much in this that, women are lied to left and right by Planned Parenthood. I think abortion should be ending because we know so much now that we didn't know years ago. But even women older than me, there's just so many stories of women who did not know what they didn't know. I mean, I think some women probably, were like, oh yeah, I don't want to be pregnant, and they've gotten that far, but then they didn't really completely understand. And for the ones who did choose, I did meet a lady who was like, yeah, I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew what an abortion was, and I wanted it. And she didn't know after, though, all the consequences that would be affecting her later. So, it's a huge lie. It's a huge industry that makes billions off killing children. Am I being dramatic by saying my child was killed? No. I have a voice now, and I'm not going after my parents. I still have a love for my parents, and I have forgiven them. Do I owe them? No, I don't owe them. I hope the best for them. I do not expect an apology from my mother. The narcissist cannot say sorry, so I don't expect an apology now. Whereas years ago, I did expect one, but I never got one. I just got, you were too young, period. So I got trampled on underfoot like you would not believe. So it's just, you just have to say bad parenting, basically, with, the whole thing that happened. It wasn't just me. I have a brother who... when he was a teenager, abortion was forced upon him, I think, with the advice he was given. So there's 3 abortions there in the family. So it's just, the sexual immorality ran really rampant in my family. I cannot keep track of how many girlfriends my brother has. We're talking hundreds, if not thousands. I don't know, and it's not my business, so I'm really not going to get into it, except that when the parenting is so low, possible, molestation. I know I had a cousin who he forced himself on me, and then another cousin who she showed me some things when I was young. When you have this kind of stuff going on, abortion is a cure because it's just, it's just like, yeah, we're going to get rid of the evidence. So, abortion is not a band-aid. Someone said you ought to post that. That ought to be like a meme. Abortion is not a band-aid. It's not. It makes things worse. So, I just, someone else, this person also said, did you ever think about what your mother went through? And I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to think about that now? And that's all I heard growing up. That's all I heard. All I heard was, well, your mother had a rough life, or your mother did the best she could, or your mother did this, or your mother did that, or it was all about her. Not once did someone say, maybe Melissa went through a hard time. Maybe Melissa deserves some kind of sympathy for what she went through. Maybe, and this is where I say, I had a child and it was probably a little girl. I don't know why. I don't know if it was a boy or a girl, but I'm thinking it probably was because I didn't have a girl, and I just kind of feel like that was probably the missed opportunity for a girl. So, she basically destroyed my mother and father, basically destroyed someone made in my image. And I know if she was a little girl, she probably would have been like this cute, sweet, little, perfect little girl. Or if I had a boy, that was in the image of me. So when someone destroys you at that level or destroys a part of you at that level, it's a slap in the face, right? I mean, you're destroying someone made in my image. What does that say about me, I mean, my mother's been very rejecting to me, but it's just, I shouldn't have had you? Is that pretty much what the message is? I mean, so why wouldn't someone want a cute little, grandkid, Why wouldn't you? And just because you're not ready, my mother wasn't ready to be a grandmother, doesn't mean that I wasn't ready to be a mother. So, and speaking of grandparenting, I met this lady today who showed me pictures of her grandkids, and I'm like, yep, I don't know which one of mine is going to make me a grandmother, but, it hasn't happened. So I should have a grandchild about 10, probably about now, 10 or 11. It hasn't happened. And I really don't understand this grandparenting thing too, which I'll talk about another time, but I am enjoying, life after having and raising my 5. I'm enjoying life on my own terms now. When you are young and you have your kids young, you're pretty committed to your family, right? So even if I had grandkids right now, I would love them and everything, but my kids would be the ones raising them. It would not be me because I already did my job, and it's not my job to raise my grandkids like by myself. So I would just be supporting my son and his wife and the grandkids. And this would be a time in my life now that I would be spending more time with my parents before they leave this earth. But because of their rejection of me and the way they have dealt with things, it's not happening. So I do hope the best for them. I do think even as you get older, it's important to continue investing in yourself and keep on working, and any work I do in the future will be to set up finances not only for myself but for my sons, so that when I leave this earth, I am leaving them something, because it says in scripture, a good man leaves something to their kids, good man or good woman. So yeah, so that's what I got for now. Have I thought about what my mother went through? That's all I heard growing up. It's all I heard was my grandmother with her issues, because we were over there every single, I don't want to say day, but during the week 2 or 3 times, after school, on the weekends. And then if not from my grandmother, my aunts and uncles were over all the time, so we'd hear about Graham through their lenses and everything she was trying to pull. One of the things she would do is my grandmother liked to go out to eat. She liked to drink. She was an alcoholic, but when she was older, she still liked to drink. So she would usually have my mother take her out and then be like, "Oh, I gotta find my wallet. Hold on." 10 minutes later, she's still digging for her wallet when the bill is there. And my mother would be like, "Just forget it, Ma. Just forget it. I got it. I got it. I got it." You know, this would happen all the time. So, so my mother was extremely good to her mother in the sense that she did a lot for her, but her heart was not always there. And it couldn't be there. It couldn't be because every time she would go see her, there would be something. Oh, all the time. It would be, fine, Mom, I'll pay for it, I'll pay for this, I'll pay for that. My mom worked, so she also took care of my grandmother. But my grandmother would always be like, "You're stupid," and all this stuff to my mother. So I always felt like if you are really going to honor your parents, it's not going to be with just the outward actions. It's going to be the heart. And because of my grandmother, my mother couldn't really honor her mother in the sense of giving her heart to her. She couldn't because even after my grandmother died, uh, you know, as far as I know, through my uncle, they were still, not through that uncle, but through what I was hearing, they were still dealing with stuff. So, and I'm sure my mother still deals with a lot from her mother. I'm sure she does, even though my grandmother's been dead for a while. I did go see my grandmother's grave. I've done that a few times, and I've have very fond memories as a kid with her, but when she got older and I was a Christian and she was a Catholic, she rejected me for not being a Catholic. So, yeah, so I have a lot of good memories from when I was young. My grandmother, I did look into the family history and I did see the relatives, and I've talked to relatives, and I've done a lot of history on my grandmother's side to find out what the heck was wrong with my grandmother. And she had a lot going on with her father and her mother, and things with the relatives. And I asked my grandmother before what happened, and she said things happen in life, and that was her answer to a marriage that was annulled. And she felt like, if you had running water in the projects, you had a lot after coming from nothing on a farm. And she had my mom in an orphanage when my mom was young, and she chose a lot of what she chose. She chose to go out and sleep around with a bunch of men as a mother and as a wife, and she had a lot to deal with later on because people talked back then and they knew each other. And she told me once she prays the rosary all the time. She said she would pray and ask God to forgive her for so much of what she had done. But my grandmother, she felt like she needed to survive with 10 kids on nothing, and she had to do what she had to do, she said. So big picture here, as a pro-life woman, do I feel like my grandmother should have never been born? No. Do I feel like my aunts and uncles should have never been born? No. A lot of people will say, "Oh, if you can't afford kids, you shouldn't have them, and look at the foster care system, and look at the orphanages, and look at all this crap people have to go through." And I know the orphanage was not a good place. I know that. St. Peter's, I believe, in Manchester. But does it mean that it's okay to kill your kids? No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter how rough of a life kids have, because when they get older, they can turn it around. So, my Uncle Bill played kick the can. He was very smart. My Uncle Steve was in jail. My Uncle Gary was in jail for stupid stuff. My Uncle Mark read a lot. So there you go. There's someone who did have a rough life, and he chose to read a lot and turn his life around and worked for like IBM. My Uncle Leon, he had a lot of success in his life. He had died. Mark died. Bill died. Steve is still alive as far as I know. And Gary died. He just dropped dead of a heart attack. Bill had a heart attack. Leon, I think he had a heart attack. I'm not sure. Yeah, so Mark and Steve, I think, are still alive. My Aunt Patty went through her kid being kidnapped. My Aunt Carol had her husband die in a drunk driving accident. My grandmother's boyfriend had a cab driver shoot him when they fought over a cigarette. My Aunt Linda's married 3 times. On and on it goes, right? Do I believe these people should have never been born? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It doesn't matter what kind of drama your family has gone through and what has happened in your life. You can turn it around. You can turn things around. So I definitely am totally pro-life despite the circumstances. Could my grandmother have made better choices? Yeah, she could have. So don't blame the choices that people make on whether you should have kids or not.